I used to think hell would announce itself with trumpets and fire, with the sky splitting open and demons pouring out like a burst sewer pipe. Instead, it starts small. It starts with 3 corpses on your doorstep, and the quiet, sick realization that you don't even slow down anymore. This morning I stepped over them the way you step over puddles after rain. The first one was a woman, maybe 30, still wearing the shredded remnants of a pleasure cult robe. Her mouth was frozen in that perfect O of final, shattering climax. Eyes rolled so far back only the whites showed, whites that had gone milky pink. A thin line of black drool had dried from the corner of her lips to her ear. The second had been a man once. Now he was mostly red sculpture, skin peeled back in careful spirals like gift trap, ribs opened like petals. Someone had taken their time. The third was just a child, couldn't have been more than 12, curled on his side, clutching a half-melted toy Aquila that had fused to his fingers. Whatever killed him had been gentle, almost loving. His face looked peaceful. 10 years ago I would have vomited until my ribs hurt. 5 years ago I would have at least whispered a quick prayer. This morning I only checked the soles of my boots for blood and kept walking, because the shift whistle howls at 5:30 whether you're late or not, and being late draws attention, and attention is the one thing you never want in this city. Welcome to paradise. People off-world, the ones who still say their catechisms and believe the emperor protects, they think a Slaaneshi hive is wall-to-wall orgies, demonettes dancing on every corner, rivers of amasic and blood running in the gutters. They think it's loud, constant, impossible to ignore. The truth is quieter, and that's what makes it worse. The city still functions. The lumen strips still flicker on at 500 with their sickly magenta glow. The trams still rattle along the elevated tracks, bells clanging the same 3-note tune they played when they were painted Aquila blue. The manufactorum whistle still howls like a dying god at the start of every shift. We still clock in, still punch our chits, still get shouted at if our quota is short. The nobles still throw parties that last weeks, yes, but the recycling plants still process the corpses into protein paste the next morning. The enforcers still patrol, only now their batons are wired for pleasure as well as pain, and they smile while they use them. Everything works. Hell has excellent infrastructure. I walk the same route I walked when I was 15, and this was still an imperial world. Same cracked rockcrete, same flickering holoscreens that once showed the emperor's holy visage and now loop endless close-ups of writhing bodies and the 6-fold rune of the Dark Prince. The air still tastes of promethium and ozone. Only now there's an undercurrent of perfume and rotting flowers that never quite goes away. I pass the same Hab block entrance where old Mrs. Callan used to sell low sticks and tell us to keep our souls clean. She's still there most mornings, only now she's nailed to the wall by her own nervous system, nerves pulled out and braided into a decorative arch. They keep her alive. She sings. The song changes every day. I nod at the enforcer on the corner the way I used to nod at the Arbites. He nods back, mask polished to a mirror finish, chrome spikes on his shoulders catching the pink light. We both pretend everything is normal, because it is. That's the trick Slaanesh played on us. He didn't burn the hive down. He moved in, changed the wallpaper, turned the volume up just enough that you notice, and then kept the lights on and the machines running. The Imperium promised you a life of service and early death. Slaanesh promised sensation. Turns out sensation and service look almost identical when you're too tired to tell the difference anymore. And the worst part, some days I catch myself preferring this. At least the sky has color now. Everyone on this rock remembers the exact minute the Imperium died here. For me, it was 9/17 on a third shift Tuesday, 10 years ago almost to the day. I was on the assembly line fitting power cells into lasgun packs, hands moving without thought because thought slowed you down and slow meant the overseer's lash. The Vox horns had been droning the usual morning litany. Blessed is the mind too small for doubt, when the hymn cut dead. Silence. Real silence, the kind you never hear in a hive. Then a single drumbeat. Low, wet, sexual. It crawled inside my bones and stroked something I didn't know was there. Another beat. Then another. Faster. Until it felt like a second heart trying to tear its way out of my chest. That was the moment the world ended. The main hololith at the end of the hall flickered, went black, then lit up with Governor Howrick Voss in robes the color of fresh bruises, eyes ringed in coal, lips painted gold. The same man who'd stood on that balcony every Emperor's Day in stiff, aquil-embroidered uniform, now looked like he'd been dipped himself in sin, and liked how it felt. He smiled the way a corpse smiles when the rigor sets in and said, voice silky through every speaker in the hive, "My beloved citizens, today we are finally free." Then the music started properly. Hypnotic, pounding, impossible to ignore. Half the factory dropped their tools and cheered like children who'd just been told school was canceled forever. The other half stood frozen, me included, waiting for the punchline, waiting for the Arbites to storm in and put a bolt through the governor's painted face. They never came. My foreman, a slab of a man named Gregor who'd once broken a man's jaw for whistling on shift, ripped off his rebreather mask, bit his own tongue until it bled, and used the blood to draw the six-fold rune across his bare chest while laughing and crying at the same time. Next to me stood little Marta, 17 years old, top of the prayer recital every week, voice like a choir seraph. She used to lead us in the morning canticle of productivity without ever missing a note. I watched her tear her drab overalls open, smear Gregor's blood across her forehead in the shape of Slaanesh's symbol, and kiss him full on the mouth while he bled out on the factory floor from the cuts he kept carving into himself. She looked over at me while she did it, eyes shining with something that wasn't fear or madness. It was relief. Like someone had finally taken a weight off her soul she'd carried since birth. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't an invasion. It was permission. Within an hour, the streets were full of people who'd been waiting their whole lives for someone to tell them it was all right to stop pretending. PDF troopers who'd secretly turned years ago threw open the armories and started handing out weapons to anyone who'd kneel and kiss the new banner. Arbeit's precincts burned before lunch. I saw Sister Hospitaller Amelia, the one who used to patch us up after accidents and quote scripture while she worked, dancing naked on the roof of her clinic while demonettes circled overhead like delighted birds. And the demonettes, Emperor protect me, the demonettes. The first one I ever saw stepped out of the smoke on cloven hooves, skin shimmering oil-slick purple, claws dripping. She looked like every forbidden dream you ever woke up ashamed of, and she moved through a squad of loyal Arbites the way a dancer moves through silk. One of them, a veteran with a carapace breastplate and a shock maul, actually dropped his weapon and fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face as she slid a single claw across his throat. He died smiling. I still see that smile sometimes when I close my eyes. By nightfall, the Aquila was gone from every spire, and the twin-tailed symbol of the Dark Prince flew in its place. My parents never made it home. I learned weeks later they'd been among the first voluntary offerings rounded up from the Hab chapels. They died screaming the Emperor's name, or so the story goes. I hope that part's true. I hope they kept it until the end. That night I hid in a storage closet with my grandfather's primer, shaking so hard the pages rattled. Outside, the city sang new songs. Inside, I tried to remember the old ones, but the words tasted like ash. The Emperor felt very far away. He's never come any closer since. You probably picture a Slaaneshi hive as an endless scream, buildings on fire, demonettes raping and flaying in every street while the sky rains blood and narcotics. That's what I expected the first few weeks after the Governor Voss flipped the flag. I waited for the total collapse, for the spires to fall, for the underhive to boil up and swallow everything in one final, perfect apocalypse. Instead, the next morning the lumen strips came on at 500 exactly like always. The trams ran 2 minutes late, which was actually an improvement, and the manufactorum whistle howled on schedule. We clocked in. We met quota. The only difference was the new posters showing the Dark Prince in ecstatic embrace with 1,000 lovers, and the fact that the overseer now carried a flayed skin whip that moaned when it tasted blood. Hell didn't destroy society. It promoted the worst parts and gave them better lighting. Everything still functions, and that's the knife that keeps twisting. The nobility. They're still here, richer and happier than ever. The same families who used to hide their vices behind golden aquilas and forced piety now parade them openly. Duke Valorian III renamed himself Duke of Decadence and Pain, and nobody laughed because he owns half the spire lifts. I once rode one of those lifts on a repair call. The walls were mirrored, the mirrors were sweating, and the music was a recording of real time from the Duke's private chambers. I fixed the mechanism in 4 minutes and spent the rest of the ride trying not to listen to what was happening to the previous repair crew. They throw parties that last weeks. When they get bored, they descend in masked processions, pluck random citizens off the street and take them upstairs. Some come back missing pieces but smiling. Most just don't come back. The next day the protein vats are a little fuller. Waste not, want not. The priesthood is worse. We used to have ministorum cardinals in somber black preaching abstinence and duty. Now we have the cult of excess in robes that dissolve when you stare too long. The high oracle, same man who used to be Cardinal Severin, voice once so grave it could make a heretic weep, now preaches from a floating dais pulled by chained demonettes he keeps as cherubs. His sermons are half song, half orgasm. Attendance is compulsory. If you look bored, the enforcers drag you forward for the practical demonstration. I've seen a man flayed alive while the congregation clapped in perfect 7/8 time. The oracle called it rhythmic education. I clapped until my palms bled. Art thrives. Emperor, forgive me, the art actually thrives. Painters who could barely sketch an aquila now produce murals that hurt to look at directly. Sculptors work in living marble. There's an entire plaza where the statues scream when the wind changes. Last month they unveiled the new centerpiece in Unity Square. 30 citizens surgically fused into an arching, ever-shifting tableau of agony and bliss. You can touch it. You're encouraged to touch it. There's a plaque, productivity through sensation. Crowds queue for hours to run their fingers along the seams and feel the pulse beneath the skin. Some come back the next day to join the queue again. Some don't come back at all. Either way, the arch grows. Even mutants have it better in a way. Under the Imperium, an extra eye meant the pyre. Now if your mutation is graceful or colorful, you might get promoted to temple dancer or noble's pet. I watched a street stall run by a 4-armed woman selling skewers of something that might once have been groks. The skewers were threaded on what were definitely human fingers. Business was good. The enforcers are the final joke. They wear the same black carapace as the old Arbites, only now it's laced with chrome and living metal that ripples when they're excited. Their job is simple: keep the city running. Not safe, running. If a cornate gang starts chopping heads without permission, the enforcers descend and turn them into abstract art. If the factories fall behind quota, the enforcers arrive with whips and drugs, and suddenly everyone works 20-hour shifts while weeping tears of gratitude. They're efficient, brutal, polite even. One smiled at me last week, mirror mask reflecting my own tired face back at me, and said, "Have a sensation-filled day, citizen." I thanked him, I meant it. He hadn't hit me. That's the new normal. The trams run. The lights stay on. The bodies get recycled. And every morning I wake up, step over whatever fresh artwork waits outside my door and go to work. Because the alternative is becoming part of the artwork. They told us the 10th anniversary grand festival of the Prince was optional. They lied with a straight face and a smile that showed too many teeth. The slogan was painted in 3-meter letters on every hab block, every tram, every corpse arch in the mid-hive. Rejoice, or be made to rejoice. Choice is a funny word around here. I remember the morning like it happened yesterday, because some mornings refuse to stay in the past. The whole city had been scrubbed clean for once. Even the blood in the gutters was fresh. Garlands of flayed skin and silk fluttered from the spires. Confetti made from shredded imperial banners and dried petals rained in slow motion all day. They herded us into Unity Plaza at dawn. 50,000 souls wearing identical porcelain masks painted with the same manic grin. Mine itched. The eye holes were too small. I could barely see the people next to me, but I could smell them. Fierce sweat, cheap narcotics, and that ever-present perfume of rot and roses. The Noise Marines arrived at 11 exactly. 4 of them towering. Baroque armor the color of bruises and fresh cream, studded with speakers that pulsed like living organs. Their instruments weren't carried, they were grafted. One had a guitar grown from screaming faces. Another played a keyboard of human spines. The leader's Vox grill was a mouth within a mouth within a mouth. When they started, the sound didn't come from the stage. It came from inside your skull, from inside your marrow. The first note hit like a physical blow. My vision whited out. By the third bar, the front 10 rows were on their knees, some weeping, some laughing, some already dead from ruptured hearts or spontaneous orgasm. Blood poured from ears, from eyes, from places blood isn't meant to come out. The rest of us cheered because the enforcers were walking the aisles with those wired batons, and clapping along to the rhythm was safer than covering your ears. I clapped until my hands bled inside the mask. I still have the scars. Midway through the set they paused, just long enough for the silence to feel like mercy, and the High Oracle ascended his dais. Same man who used to be the governor, now so altered he barely looked human. Skin lacquered gold, eyes replaced with clusters of black pearls that wept perfumed tears. He spread his arms, and the crowd quietened the way you quieten when a blade is at your throat. "Today," he sang, voice slithering into every ear at once, "we offer the Prince the finest sensations this world has ever known." Volunteers stepped forward. Nobody moved. Then the enforcers started choosing. They dragged them up one by one, 12 in total. Some were genuine devotees, eyes shining with fanatic bliss, already stripping as they walked. The rest were just people. A habwife who'd missed too many tithes, a factory clerk who'd looked bored at last week's sermon, and Joran the baker's apprentice from my block, 19 years old, used to sneak me extra recaf when the queues were long and the cold got into your bones. Shy smile, freckles. He was screaming before they even touched him, but the mask muffled it to a pathetic whine. They hauled him past me close enough that his fingers brushed my sleeve. He looked straight at me through the eye holes of his grinning mask, and I saw it. Recognition, terror, the plea that said, "Please remember I was a person." I looked away. I clapped harder. I still wake up tasting his blood in the air. What happened next doesn't translate cleanly into words, and I'm grateful for that. They started with blades that sang as they cut, then with tools that weren't tools, then with sorcery that made flesh flow like wax. They kept the offerings alive and conscious the whole time, wired nerves to amplifiers so every sensation became part of the symphony. Skin became instruments. Organs became percussion. The noise marines played along, improvising on the screams. At the crescendo, the air split open above the stage. A wound in reality, pink and wet and hungry. Something vast looked through for a heartbeat, something that had too many eyes and all of them were pleased. The rift closed with a sound like a kiss. The plaza stank of blood and semen and burnt sugar. The crowd roared like we just witnessed the emperor's ascension. I vomited inside my mask and nobody noticed. When they finally let us go, the sun was setting in colors that don't have names. I stumbled home, stepping over people still twitching in the gutters, still smiling. Peeled the mask off in my hab unit and threw up for real this time, until my stomach cramped and there was nothing left but bile and shame. Happy anniversary. That night I dreamed of Joran's face without the mask, still smiling, still screaming. Some dreams don't fade when you wake up. After the festival, Ral, one of the few co-workers who still bothered to talk to me, kept insisting I needed to loosen up. He said the same thing every shift for weeks, voice low so the overseer wouldn't hear, eyes shining with the cheap chemical enthusiasm that passes for hope around here. Eventually I said yes, because saying no forever makes you stand out, and standing out is how you end up on the next stage. So one night we slipped down a rusted hatch into the velvet vortex, a club carved out of old manufactorum tunnels where the air tasted like melted candy and broken promises. One glowing green drink. That's all it took. At first it was just warmth, colors a little brighter, music a little sweeter. I remember thinking maybe this wasn't so bad, maybe I could pretend for one night. Then the walls started breathing. The dancers on the platform unfolded extra joints and smiled with too many teeth. A woman, or something shaped like one, bent backward until her spine touched her own heels, and whispered my childhood name, the one nobody has used since the takeover, in a voice that sounded exactly like my mother the day she was dragged away. The floor turned into a carpet of tongues. The drink in my glass grew an eye that winked. I ran. I don't remember the ladder, only the alley air hitting my face and the taste of vomit that went on for hours while my eyes bled pink and gold. The colors faded by morning, but I still check the mirror every single day, searching for the faintest ring of gold around the pupil, the slightest vein of magenta in the white. So far the emperor, or luck, or simple stubborn biology has kept me on this side of the line. I will not cross it willingly. Survival here is a quiet game now. I attend the sermons, clap in the right places, wear the little six-fold pendant I looted off a corpse 10 years ago. I cheer when the enforcers drag another volunteer away. I laugh at the right jokes. But every night, when the city finally quiets enough that I can hear my own heartbeat over the distant music, I take out the one thing I should have burned years ago. A cracked imperial aquila no bigger than a recaf tin, edges worn smooth from being hidden in my fist during air raid drills when I was a child. I hold it until the metal warms. I whisper the old words, the ones that used to come before breakfast, before work, before another day of pretending. Emperor, deliver me from temptation. Deliver me from evil. I'm not sure I still believe them. I'm not sure he's listening. But they are the last words that are truly mine, not borrowed from the prince, not forced out of my mouth by fear. There are 4 of us left that I know of, maybe 5, who still remember the litanies the old way. Marius from the factory, Elena the underground medic, a deaf girl in the Hab laundry who trades clean bandages for silence. We never speak openly. We trade nods, small favors, an extra ration bar pressed into a hand when no one's looking. Once Marius knocked over a crate during a sacrifice broadcast, so I wouldn't have to watch the part where they opened the boy's chest to show his heart still beating. He never mentioned it again. I saved him from a random enforcer search by claiming he was helping me meet quota. That's all the friendship we can afford. Love is impossible. Lust is mandatory and meaningless. I see Celeste sometimes in the processions, Sister Celestia of the Scarlet Bliss now, serpent mask and oiled skin, leading lines of drugged initiates. Our eyes met once. Nothing passed between us. Whatever we might have been died the day the music started. Hope. There is none. No crusade is coming for a tainted world. We are the footnote the Imperium burned from the ledger. But every morning when I step over the fresh corpses, when I clock in and smile at the overseer and pretend the new murals don't make my stomach turn, I carry that tiny aquila in my pocket like a live coal. As long as it's there, as long as I can still feel disgust, still feel shame, still whisper the old words in the dark, they haven't won completely. If the Dark Prince is watching, I hope he's bored senseless. Because the quietest rebellion left in this hive is a man who refuses to enjoy hell. I tighten my bootlaces, hide the aquila again, and walk out into another pink dawn. One more day. One more ordinary, unnoticed, stubbornly human day.